Alright, this is a real quick introduction on how to use the TMDL report selection tool. Let me start by refreshing the page so we all see the same thing. Might take a few seconds to load. So once it loads, you should see four critical components. One is this slider. It's called this critical frequency slider. Then this chord graph. You can hover over the chord graph and see relationships, and you can also click on it. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then this matrix graph. This matrix graph, depending on your screen resolution, you might see it under the chord graph, or if you have a big enough screen like I do here, you will see it side by side. I think it's better to see them side by side than underneath each other. The matrix graph actually visualizes exactly same data as the chord graph. It's just that I find sometimes it's easier to look at relationships and the strength of relationships by using a matrix graph than chord graph. And for other things, there are some other things for which chord graph is useful. And the fourth component, of course, is the table, and this is where you will get your filtered reports, and you can click on the report link to directly get it from EPA's website. One thing to note is that table has pages, so once you filter, do look at other pages if there are some. It does display the number of entries. Alright, so before I start talking about the tool, which is fairly simple, it's very intuitive, I think, I'm going to spend a minute on explaining how the data for this report was collected. This tool is a work in progress, and I've been trying to explore other ways to collect data. If I change the underlying data, I will make sure I update it in the text and update it with fonts that tell you that it has been updated. And I will try to record another video if I do that, but at least in the text I will update it. So basically what I did was went to the EPS Attain's website and did a text search for the term TMDL. This search returned around 24,000 hits, maybe a little bit less than 24,000. I'm not sure exact number, but somewhere in that order. The 24,000 records included the TMDL reports, decision letters, and other documents that were related to TMDL. But I was only interested in TMDL implementation report and development documents. So I narrowed it down to around 1,800 reports and documents which in my opinion were useful. So the process I used to narrow it down is all documented, is on GitHub, and if I'm just going to scroll down and show you the link where you can find the process. So this will link you to a HTML file which show you what did I do. If you know Python, you can actually follow what exactly did I do. And then there are some other documents on GitHub. So let me go back up, and so once I had this 1,800 documents, I did text search for various terms. These terms included model names and some terms that will be associated with TMDL, like things like calibration, validation, and spreadsheet, and other simple models. After the searches, my new record set had frequency of each of these terms for every report. So, and this tool is basically visualizing that matrix. You can think of this matrix as a report along with some other metadata describing the report, including impairment and the frequency of each of these terms. So the impairments was interesting. So I did not really search for it using a text search. It was already marked in the EPA data set. So I'm using the EPA metadata for impairment directly. Alright, let's look at the tool. How do I use the tool? So to use a tool, usually I start with selecting a reasonable number which I want. There's no reason to just select one. You can try several. So when I selected, I made it 12, and I see all the chord graph, the matrix, and the table changed. The number of reports has gone down as we expect. So now with 12, what exactly do I mean here? What did I do here? So the slider lets you choose a number of times a particular term or model must appear in the report for the report to be considered using that model. I guess it's easier to explain an example. So what's happening here is when the number is 12, each of these terms that was searched for, that are models and other terms, must appear at least 12 times for that report to be considered using that model. So for example, HSPF LSPC model must appear at least 12 times in its various form: HSPF, LSPC, HSPF in brackets, anything like that. It's based on regular expressions, and regular expression I use for each model is actually documented down, if you scroll down, and that thing must appear 12 times, so that for the report to be considered using HSPF LSPC. And so once I have selected the critical frequency, I can go ahead and click on terms that interest me. So let's say I'm looking for a nutrient impairment. I'll go and click on nutrient. What happened is the report, the table, and all the table, and the chart and the table is filtered for all the reports that had some sort of nutrient impairment. It got me down to 188 entries. I'm also looking for reports that use HSPF. Alright, so now impairment HSPF. I see there are some which actually have validation. Okay, so let's look for validation. Now I have three filters: nutrients, HSPF, and validation. And voila, I have 4 reports which I can actually look into and see what did they do. So that's how you will one way to use it. You can use it to filter the records that are available and selectively look at reports which might be interesting to you. And you can, there are other ways to look at it. Of course, you can use this tool to visualize relationships between impairments, between models, which models are used in conjunction, and things of that nature. And of course, and perhaps more obviously, which model has been used for what impairment. There might be other ways to use it too. So if you find of something interesting, let me know. Oh, by the way, I meant to tell you guys that there's a little bit of color coding going on here. If you look really close, the outlines of all the impairments are gray. That goes from ammonia all the way up to pH acidity. The blue outlines are the receiving water body models. The brown outlines are watershed model, and a yellow are other terms that I search for. And the same color code loosely applies. Well, it is applied, but it's kind of hard to see in the matrix too. That's all I had. So if you have something we want changed or something you enjoyed using, drop me a note. Here's my email. And if you find a bug, please do let me know. And if you want to collaborate in some way, I'm very interested in exploring this tool further and looking at other ways where people have used this tool. Thanks.